There are certain crimes that don't just shock a community, they shatter it. The kind that make you question how someone could hide such darkness behind a seemingly ordinary face. The kind that reminds us of evil doesn't always announce itself with warning signs. Sometimes it just waits for the perfect moment. This is the story of Stephanie Scott, a young woman whose life was stolen just 6 days before what should have been the happiest day of her life. Her murder in 2015 didn't just devastate her family and fiancé. It broke the heart of an entire Australian town and sparked a national conversation about violence, safety, and the monsters who hide in plain sight. Picture this. It's Easter weekend in 2015. In the small NSW Riverina town of Leeton, population hovering around 6,700 people. A young teacher named Stephanie Scott is putting the final touches on her wedding plans. She's 26 years old, bright-eyed, with a smile that could light up any room she walked into. Her colleagues at Leeton High School, where she teaches English and drama, had just thrown her a celebration 3 days earlier. Everyone in town knows about the upcoming wedding. In a place like Leeton, where everybody knows everybody else's business, a teacher getting married is community news. Yellow ribbons and balloons, Stephanie's favorite color, are already being prepared for the celebration. Stephanie Clare Scott was born on October 14th, 1988, in Sydney. But by 2015, Leeton had become her home. She came from an education-minded family. Her father, Bob Scott, was the deputy principal at Canowindra High School, and it was through her dad's work that Stephanie first met Aaron Leeson-Woolley. Aaron had been a student at Bob's school, and over time, he grew close to the Scott family. What started as family friendship eventually blossomed into something more. 2 years after meeting, Stephanie and Aaron began dating, and their relationship became one of those heartwarming, small-town love stories everyone roots for. By Easter 2015, they'd been together for years, and their wedding was set for April 11th, exactly 1 year after Aaron proposed. Stephanie had poured her heart into planning every detail of their special day. She was meticulous by nature, the kind of person who color-coded her lesson plans and made sure everything was perfect for her students. That same care and attention went into planning her wedding. She'd spent countless hours making sure every element reflected their relationship, their journey, their love. The venue was booked. The dress was hanging in her closet. Invitations had been sent. Family and friends from all over were preparing to descend on Leeton to celebrate with them. Everything was falling into place. On Saturday, April 4th, Aaron had plans to head out of town for his bachelor party. It was going to be a whole thing, friends. Laughter. The kind of celebration you only get once in a lifetime. But Stephanie had a few items left on her to-do list. Being the conscientious teacher she was, she wanted to make absolutely certain that the substitute teacher, who would cover her classes during her 2-week honeymoon, had everything they needed. She didn't want to leave anything to chance. At 12:30 on Friday afternoon, April 3rd, Aaron kissed his fiancée goodbye and told her he loved her. Those would be the last words he'd ever say to her, face to face. That Saturday night, they said goodnight over the phone around 10:30. Everything seemed normal, ordinary, perfect even. Sunday morning, Easter Sunday, Stephanie sent Aaron a text message letting him know she was heading into Leeton High School for a few hours to finish up her prep work. It was the kind of thing she'd do. Go the extra mile. Make sure everything was organized. Aaron, enjoying time with his friends, figured she'd be done in a few hours and they'd connect when he got back to Leeton. They'd even talked about grabbing dinner at the village restaurant that evening. He'd already booked a table, just in case. But when Aaron tried calling Stephanie on his drive home that afternoon, his calls went unanswered. At first, he wasn't too worried. Maybe she got caught up at school. Maybe her phone died. These things happen, right? But when he arrived at their home and found neither Stephanie nor her Red Master 3 there, a knot of worry began forming in his stomach. He called again. Nothing. He drove around town, checking the school, checking with friends, anywhere she might be. Still, nothing. By that evening, concern had turned to genuine fear. On Monday, April 6th, Aaron contacted Stephanie's family, and they filed a missing persons report with Leeton Police. Now, to understand what happened next, you need to understand what Leeton is like. This isn't Sydney or Melbourne. This is a town where people linger at the newsstand to chat about their week, where taking your dog for a walk means stopping every few minutes to say hello to neighbors, where there are definitely fewer than 6 degrees of separation between any two residents. When word got out that Stephanie Scott, beloved high school teacher and soon-to-be bride, had vanished, the community response was immediate and overwhelming. Touch footy teams organized search parties. Teachers, students, parents, everyone who knew Stephanie or had been touched by her kindness mobilized to find her. Mayor Paul Maytom later described the mood as absolutely devastating. Leeton's worst crime up until this point had been property vandalism. The idea that something terrible could happen to someone like Stephanie, someone who gave so much to the community, who had such a bright future ahead, was incomprehensible. Social media posts from Stephanie's family gained traction fast. Yellow balloons and ribbons began appearing around town, symbols of hope and support for a young woman everyone expected, prayed, would be found alive and well. Maybe she'd had cold feet. Maybe there was some explanation. Maybe this would all turn out to be a misunderstanding. But while the community searched desperately for Stephanie, police were following a different thread. Their investigation led them to focus on someone who had been at Leeton High School on Easter Sunday. Someone who shouldn't have raised any red flags, but who, investigators quickly realized, had some very disturbing secrets. His name was Vincent Stanford, and he was 24 years old. Stanford worked as a casual cleaner at Leeton High School, the same place where Stephanie taught. On the surface, he seemed unremarkable. A quiet guy who kept to himself, lived with his mother Anneke Nort and one of his brothers on Maiden Avenue. Neighbors described him as somewhat of a loner who spent most of his time playing online video games. He'd moved to Leeton from Tasmania, and before that, his family had lived in the Netherlands, where he'd worked as a professional cleaner. When he applied for the cleaning position at the high school in October 2014, he'd passed both police checks and working with children checks. Nothing about him seemed overtly dangerous. But Vincent Stanford was hiding something monstrous. What police discovered when they started digging into Stanford's life was nothing short of horrifying. This wasn't some impulsive crime of opportunity. Stanford had been methodically planning something like this for a long time. In his room, investigators found a journal, and what was written in those pages painted a picture of a deeply disturbed individual who had been stalking multiple women in Leeton, documenting their movements with chilling precision. He'd been particularly fixated on a 12-year-old girl. Police found 1,805 photographs of her that Stanford had taken covertly. He'd followed her, documented when she was home alone, tracked her family's schedules. In his exercise book, detailing her routine, one entry read simply, "Home alone, 15:40. Time enough to abduct." Let that sink in for a moment. This was a man who had been planning an abduction, who had been watching, waiting, calculating the perfect time to strike, and Stephanie Scott wasn't even his original intended victim. Stanford's internet search history revealed more disturbing patterns. 2 months before the murder, in February 2015, he typed 8 chilling phrases into his computer. Bride rape and bride kidnapping among them. It was common knowledge around the school that Stephanie was getting married. Steph had thrown her a party on April 2nd. The wedding was the talk of the school. Stanford knew. And something about that fact had triggered whatever darkness lived inside him. When questioned later, Stanford would tell police he'd had thoughts about killing since he was about 8 years old. He described himself as someone who didn't want to adapt to society, someone who believed he didn't have the capacity to do so. The psychological evaluation would later reveal he had autism spectrum disorder, though experts would debate whether this had any causal connection to his violent actions. What was clear was that Vincent Stanford was, as Justice Hume would later state, a very disturbed individual. On Easter Sunday, April 5th, 2015, Stephanie Scott arrived at Leeton High School around 11 in the morning. The building was mostly empty. It was a holiday weekend after all. She made her way to a classroom, spread out her meticulously prepared lesson plans, and got to work making sure everything was perfect for the substitute teacher. She had no idea that Vincent Stanford was also at the school that day. He saw her there, alone, vulnerable. And in that moment, something snapped in whatever remained of his conscience. Stanford left the school and drove home. He told his mother he had forgotten something. What he actually went home to retrieve was what he called his rape kit, a collection that included a knife, handcuffs, and other items he had been preparing for exactly this kind of opportunity. Then he drove back to Leeton High School. What happened next is almost too brutal to put into words, but it's important we don't shy away from the reality of what Stephanie endured. As she was preparing to leave the school, she bumped into Stanford in a corridor. Being the kind, friendly person she was, Stephanie smiled at him and wished him a happy Easter. Those were likely the last words she ever spoke. Stanford grabbed her. Before she could scream or run or process what was happening, he dragged her into a storeroom. What followed was an attack of extreme brutality. Stanford punched Stephanie 30 to 40 times, blow after blow to her head and face until she lost consciousness. Then he sexually assaulted her. When he was done, he stabbed her in the neck with the knife he'd brought from home. Stephanie died from blunt force head trauma, alone in that storage room, in the school where she'd given so much of herself to educating young minds. And then Vincent Stanford did something that reveals just how disturbed he truly was. He left the school, drove home, and made himself a cheese sandwich and a cup of coffee. He sat in his house eating lunch as if he hadn't just brutally murdered someone. Then he went back to the school and spent several hours meticulously cleaning up the crime scene. He loaded Stephanie's body into the boot of her own car and drove it back to his house, parking it behind a shed in his backyard. Her body stayed there overnight while he slept. In the early hours of Easter Monday morning, while Aaron was trying desperately to figure out where his fiancé had gone, Vincent Stanford was driving Stephanie's red Mazda to Cocopara National Park, about 70 kilometers northeast of Leeton, near Griffith. In an isolated area off a dirt road, he removed her body from the vehicle. He placed branches over her and set her remains on fire. But even that wasn't the end of his depravity. Stanford took photographs of Stephanie's burned body with his camera. Then he drove her car back toward Leeton and abandoned it in a field at Wamoon, about 8 kilometers from town. For 4 days, Vincent Stanford went about his life as if nothing had happened. Neighbors would later recall seeing him on Monday, hanging freshly washed clothes on the line. He'd even had tea with neighbors, the Scanlons, on multiple occasions. Nobody suspected a thing, but police were getting closer. On Wednesday, April 8th, officers discovered inconsistencies in Stanford's alibi. When they searched his home, they found Stephanie's keys, keys that matched those from the school. More damningly, they found a camera containing photographs of a burned human body. When confronted, Stanford claimed he downloaded the images from a horror movie, but that lie crumbled when investigators also found blood-stained handcuffs in his bedroom. The GPS system in his Toyota Hilux told the rest of the story, with destinations logged to Boundary Road and Cocopara National Park. Vincent Stanford was arrested on April 8th and charged with murder the following day. He consented to forensic procedures but declined to be interviewed with a solicitor present. Scratches covered his body defensive wounds from Stephanie's desperate fight for her life. Fingernail scrapings were collected. DNA samples were taken. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. On April 10th, what should have been Stephanie Scott's wedding day, police discovered her burned remains in Cocopara National Park. Detectives on dirt bikes combed through the isolated area until they found her. Instead of walking down the aisle toward the man she loved, instead of celebrating with family and friends, Stephanie's body was being recovered from a remote bushland location where her killer had tried to erase her existence. The nation mourned. Australia had fallen in love with Stephanie's story. The young teacher, the devoted fiancé, the woman with so much promise, and her loss felt personal to millions who had never met her. In Leeton, the devastation was beyond words. The memorial outside the high school grew larger every day, covered in yellow ribbons, flowers, photos, and messages from students and community members trying to process the incomprehensible. On June 3rd, Stanford was additionally charged with aggravated sexual assault. But the story took another dark turn when police uncovered his twin brother's involvement. Marcus Stanford, Vincent's identical twin who lived in South Australia, was arrested on June 10th and charged with being an accessory after the fact to murder. Vincent had mailed Stephanie's engagement ring and graduation ring to Marcus, who then pawned them for $705. In September 2016, Marcus would be sentenced to 15 months in jail for his role in helping his brother dispose of evidence. On July 20th, 2016, Vincent Stanford entered guilty pleas to both murder and aggravated sexual assault. 3 months later, on October 13th, he appeared for sentencing at the Supreme Court in Griffith. The courtroom was packed with Stephanie's family, friends, and community members wearing yellow in her honor. Her mother, Marilyn, read a victim impact statement that brought everyone to tears, describing how Stephanie's beautiful smile beamed out from every photograph, but emphasizing they didn't need photos. She lived in every cell of their bodies, just a heartbeat away. Justice Robert Allen Hulme delivered a powerful sentencing statement. He described the agreed facts of the case as making it plain that this was one of great heinousness. The attack involved extreme brutality by a man of substantial size upon a defenseless young woman of modest size who had no means of escape or raising the alarm. Justice Hulme noted that Stanford showed no remorse, rarely thought about his crime, and would represent a serious danger to the community if ever released. The evidence of Stanford's violent sex-related internet searches, his possession of weapons, his stalking behavior, and his detailed planning all pointed to someone who would certainly kill again if given the chance. Vincent Stanford was sentenced to 15 years in jail for aggravated sexual assault and life imprisonment without parole for murder. The judge classified the offenses falling within the worst case category, calling for the maximum penalty. Stanford would spend the rest of his life behind bars, separated from other inmates due to the nature of his crimes, passing his hours much as he had before playing video games, but now in a prison cell rather than his mother's house. For Stephanie's family, no sentence could ever be enough. No punishment could bring back their daughter, sister, friend. Aaron Leeson-Woolley had lost the woman he planned to spend his life with. He'd been preparing for a wedding and instead had to plan a funeral. The town of Leeton had lost not just a beloved teacher, but a piece of its innocence, its sense of safety. In a tragic and painful footnote to this story, on October 31st, 2016, just 2 weeks after Vincent Stanford was sentenced, Stephanie's father, Bob Scott, was killed in a farm accident. He was felling trees on the family property in Canawindra when a falling branch struck him. The Scott family, already devastated beyond measure by Stephanie's murder, had to endure yet another unbearable loss. Stephanie's family took civil action against the NWS Education Department, raising serious questions about how Vincent Stanford had been allowed to work at the school despite multiple red flags. Court documents revealed that Stanford had been cited at Leeton High School when he wasn't rostered to work. He'd been seen lingering around and entering the girls' toilet block. He'd somehow obtained the school's alarm code, despite the principal specifically requesting that casual cleaners not have access to it. How had all of this been missed or ignored? The matter was eventually settled, with the details remaining confidential. But the hope was that changes would be implemented to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. In the years since, life has moved forward for those left behind, though the scars remain. Aaron Leeson-Woolley eventually found love again and became engaged to Samantha Cirillo, a fellow Leeton local. While nothing can erase the pain of losing Stephanie, there's something bittersweet in knowing that Aaron was able to open his heart again and find happiness. Stephanie, who loved him so deeply, would have wanted that for him. The town of Leeton slowly healed, though they'll never forget what happened on that Easter Sunday in 2015. The story of Stephanie Scott has become a permanent part of their collective memory, a reminder that evil can hide anywhere, that violence doesn't discriminate, and that we must remain vigilant in protecting the vulnerable members of our communities. What makes Stephanie's story particularly haunting is learning that she wasn't even Vincent Stanford's intended target. His journal, his photographs, his meticulous planning, all of it had been focused on that 12-year-old girl. Stephanie was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, crossing paths with a predator who had been waiting for an opportunity, any opportunity, to act on his violent fantasies. When he saw her alone at the school that Easter Sunday, he couldn't resist. And a young woman who had done nothing but spread kindness and education paid the ultimate price. There's also a broader conversation to be had about violence against women, about workplace safety, about the ways our systems fail to identify dangerous individuals before tragedy strikes. Stephanie's death marked the 30th woman killed by violence in Australia in just the first 4 months of 2015. She was murdered in broad daylight, at her workplace, by someone who had passed background checks. If we're being honest, nowhere is truly safe. Not parks, not homes, and tragically, not even workplaces, until we fundamentally address the root causes of violence and improve our systems for identifying threats. Stephanie Scott's life was so much more than the brutal way it ended. She was a daughter who made her parents proud, a sister who shared jokes and memories with her siblings, a fiancé who found her soulmate and was days away from marrying him, a teacher who inspired students and colleagues alike, a friend who showed up for people, a community member who made Leeton better just by being part of it. She had dreams, plans, a future she was excited to step into. All of that was stolen by a monster who decided his twisted fantasies were more important than her right to exist. When we tell these stories, when we examine these cases, it's not about glorifying violence or satisfying morbid curiosity. It's about bearing witness. It's about making sure victims like Stephanie Scott aren't forgotten, aren't reduced to statistics, aren't remembered only as cautionary tales. It's about honoring the fullness of who they were while demanding better from our institutions, our communities, and ourselves. Stephanie Scott should be 37 years old now, maybe with a family of her own, still teaching at Leeton High, still spreading that warmth and kindness that everyone who knew her remembers. Instead, her life was cut short at 26 by senseless violence. But her memory lives on, in the hearts of those who loved her, in the changes her death inspired, in the continued conversation about how we protect the vulnerable and identify the dangerous before it's too late. If you've stuck with us through this difficult story, thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness to Stephanie's life and legacy. If you found this video informative or moving, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into true crime cases. These stories matter. These lives matter. And by engaging with them thoughtfully and respectfully, we keep their memories alive while working toward a safer world for everyone. Rest in peace, Stephanie Clare Scott. You deserved so much better. You deserved your wedding day, your honeymoon, your lifetime with Aaron, your years of teaching and inspiring students. You deserve to grow old. And while we can't give you any of that back, we can make sure you're never forgotten. Welcome to Unsolved Borough.